Live from clickorlando.com, this is News 6 at 5:30. This is a News 6 Plus takeover. Here now is Solutionaries.
Hi everyone, I'm Louis Bolden, and this is Solutionaries. Today, we are talking trash. Some say it is the biggest global problem that no one is talking about. And in the United States, we certainly contribute our fair share. Experts say the average American creates about 4 pounds of trash per day and up to 56 tons of trash per year. The United States makes up about 5% of the world's population, but contributes about 40% of the global waste, according to experts. And dealing with trash can be a huge undertaking.
Go into any store right now and buy pretty much anything, and you'll find packaging that looks like this, or this, or this. Shrink-wrapped, sealed, and stored, all in plastic. And the one thing all these have in common isn't that it just seems like overkill to put all this packaging around products, it's that most of it can never be recycled. But why did we start using this in the first place? Pretty much since humans have been making stuff, we've been making things to put that stuff in, known in the packaging industry as flexible packaging. The first recorded pieces of packaging date back to ancient China in the 1st or 2nd century BC. Sheets of bark were treated and used to wrap foods. As time went on, obviously companies experimented with and still use what's known as rigid packaging, like glass or metal. I mean, Coke bottles are still iconic, but plastics have dominated the last 70 years.
Plastics take the stage at an international exhibit in Amsterdam.
Plastics were originally off limits to consumers. The first plastics with names like styrene, vinyl chloride, and celluloid were developed in the late 1800s and were meant only for military use.
The horizons of plastic are lengthening and strengthening too.
The first flexible plastic was celluloid acetate, and it was made from wood pulp, literally using cellulose, the sturdy but flexible fibers that give plants their strength and shape. The first were made in 1900 and initially used for photography around 1909. It also had the advantage of being slightly breathable and totally biodegradable, but it was expensive to produce. So between 1910 and the 1950s,
a new domain of man's own creation,
companies experimented with all sorts of flexible fibrous plastics with names like propylene, polyethylene, and polyethylene terephthalate, or PET.
Here it is, the most amazing food wrap ever developed,
which becomes the most used plastic by the 1980s. And people were excited about these new plastics. I mean, really excited. Just look at this video from Dow Chemical that I think was made for high schoolers or something.
Chemistry needn't be a drag. Just take another look, it could be your bag.
Anyway, all of those have a few things in common that made them great choices for packaging. For starters, they're non-breathable, so they can keep food fresher for longer. They're generally clear, so consumers can actually see what they're buying. And maybe the biggest advantage, they're just cheaper to make than other plastics. With the rise of e-commerce in the last 20 years, flexible plastic has become the most efficient way to ship things we buy. One study found Amazon produced 465 million pounds of plastic waste in 2019 alone. That's enough to make those air-filled packaging pillows that come in the boxes and circle the earth 500 times. Plastic waste has also become a huge environmental and health problem. In the United States Great Lakes, researchers found that 10,000 metric tons, or about 22 million pounds of plastic waste, ends up in the ecosystem of our largest bodies of fresh water. And in the ocean, 80% of the litter is plastic. And it never breaks down, creating what's called microplastics, which end up in the food chain and eventually in us. Just this year, scientists found microplastics, these microscopic pieces of plastic that get made when plastic pollution is ground down over time, in human blood.
The thing is, we know this, and we've known most of it for a long time, but we are really bad at recycling, and not just sort of bad, but really bad.
Since the 1950s, only 2% of all the world's plastic has been recycled. But there are people working at the most local levels to try to fix that. Which is why we came here, a place literally called Recycle Here, to talk to one of them.
We started with our youth, and we've grown to now work with businesses, and we work with the community on the Detroit Recycles curbside recycling program.
Natalie Jacob is the executive director of Green Living Science. She helps teach kids about trash and recycling in Detroit, where the city deals with millions of pounds of litter each year. In 2018 alone, Detroit's Department of Public Works collected 92 million pounds of trash from illegal dumping sites around the city. People like Natalie have been instrumental in getting recycling into Detroit public schools and apartment buildings downtown, including the one I live in, which I didn't know until we talked. Their lessons are meant to teach kids about recycling, why it's important, and how they can start recycling.
For the education to be impactful, we have to have some scare factor in there, so we do let them know the negative impacts plastic has on the animals. In some cases, we have shown them pictures. It breaks their heart to see it. It breaks our hearts to see it. And so we do have some element of that, but we do focus a lot more on here's what you can do, and here's why it's important.
But at the local level, getting kids to think about recycling can create a lifelong habit and one that trickles up to their parents.
Kids get it. Kids get it more than their parents do. One of the things we hear the most is that the reason that a family is here is because of their child. So they learned about it in school, they made their families recycle, and they wanted to come here.
But it's only part of the solution.
Well, all of this is great, and it helps on the small level to clean up our neighborhoods and cities. Solving the problems of plastics is not something that we can crush our way out of. It's going to take real change at the biggest levels.
And that's where the work of researchers like Michigan State's Dr. Mohammed Rabnawaz come in.
Plastic recycling is a big problem. Literally speaking, today, 40% of the plastic that is produced, it goes into the packaging. And packaging essentially is creating almost 50% of the plastic waste.
Dr. Rabnawaz works on developing new kinds of packaging that's more biodegradable and can help reduce waste. But even he would say it's just as much about getting companies to start using better packaging as it is about design, which is why he says the solution to this problem is to give big companies incentives to change their packaging or tax them for using environmentally unfriendly plastic, sort of a stick and carrot for corporations.
If you are using virgin material like new plastic in the package, you need to pay a penalty, extra tax. And the carrot is for the companies, if you are putting more recycled content, you get tax incentive. So basically giving them both options. You want to go this way or that way, you will have the benefits if you move forward with the recycling.
And he says that stick and carrot method has already been shown to work. In the European Union, for example, companies are forced to pay up front for the cost of the plastics they use that can't be recycled, which means now 40% of their plastics get recycled. In the US, where we don't have that system, it's just 9%. But it is an uphill battle. Companies at every level of the plastic and packaging industries have spent decades fueling research and funding campaigns to keep non-recyclable plastics on the market. And it's worked. Not to mention, they've used that same research to put the cost of finding ways to recycle on the consumer, on us, rather than on themselves.
It's not easy because you are competing against the low-cost material like polyethylene, right, which is so cheap. But we cannot go with the practices that what we do here. So eventually it will be a combination of something like a bio-based material, which essentially are biodegradable. There's one aspect. And then reducing the creation of the new plastic by adding more and more recycled content into the packaging. So those are the two things that I see like should go together.
Plastics and plastic packaging is a really complicated problem with complicated solutions. But maybe that's just it. If we start with solutions big and small, we can end up boxing this problem in, maybe, for good.
Stay with us as we show you how solutionaries are getting rid of garbage piling up on our beaches. Trash in our waterways is also a problem. Plastic bottles, plastic bags, basically anything that's man-made that's not supposed to be there is considered marine debris. Sometimes you can see the debris just walking along the beach. Other times the debris is so small you can barely see it in the water. These are often referred to as microplastics. Right now there is a new push to clean up these microplastics, and there is research that suggests that these plastics can even end up in our bodies. That's according to John Peterson with SeaWorld. Solutionaries correspondent Eric Sandoval has more.
We're on our way to Cocoa Beach, Florida today, which is located in Brevard County, just east of Orlando. It's really one of the top tourist beach destinations in the state. A lot of tourists love it, spring breakers, locals, myself included. And it's because all those people love to go there that they've really struggled with the garbage and the trash that's left out on the sand. We're going to check out an experimental technique that they've deployed that they say has the potential to make beach cleanup a little more efficient.
The president of Keep Florida Beautiful reached out and they're like, hey, you want a robot? I'm like, yes, I want a robot. So a couple weeks later, it showed up. My name is Brian Bobbitt, Executive Director of Keep Brevard Beautiful. You know, this is my home. I want to make sure it's clean. You know, we see people that are here with their families. No one wants to have trash out on their beach. So this is why I do what we do. This is Bebot. It cleans the beach. So Bebot is a solar-powered and electric robot that will actually sift through the sand and remove all the microplastics and sift everything out. It doesn't take long to fill up this tray full of stuff.
We're constantly picking up trash out here, and you guys do an awesome job.
Oh, we appreciate it. Plastic bag, several bottle caps, a sticker to a Star Wars thing, straw, cigarette butt, yep, cigarette butt, plastic fork handle, a dental pick, ew.
Bobbitt says his volunteers still collect garbage here by hand. In fact, they collected more than 145 tons of it in 1 year alone. But it's the tiny pieces that Bebot is able to pick up that could be a game changer.
What is that?
That is a microplastic. So it was a piece of something bigger, maybe a Frisbee or a beach toy or whatever. You know, it gets left out here on the sand, it gets sun-baked, breaks down, and eventually goes into smaller pieces. So that is the definition of a microplastic. Now the problem is that stuff can end up in the water. Fish eat it, turtles eat it, other wildlife eat it. We eat the fish.
I was going to say, and then we end up eating the fish and it gets in us.
Exactly.
So my official title is Education Coordinator at the Marine Science Center. My name's Shell Webster.
And Shell, short for Michelle, says garbage that makes its way into oceans and lakes can impact marine life that lives there, like sea turtles.
When they're in the ocean, they're looking for food, they're holding their breath, they're diving down to go and get things like jellyfish. And then you're diving down again and you're going down for another jellyfish, but showing them that it looks like a jellyfish.
It's a grocery bag.
Right. And that's why this is, you know, I love the fact that you love this one. This is great. My little plastic bag in the water that just looks like a jellyfish.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Hancock. I am the Assistant Manager of Sea Turtle Rehabilitation here at the Marine Science Center in Ponce Inlet, Florida. So in here, we're actually in our sea turtle hospital.
And it's inside this hospital that Alyssa and her team have helped save the lives of more than 25,000 reptiles. A lot of those were sea turtles who were trapped in garbage.
We've got some fishing line. It gets entangled around their flippers as well as around their necks. So Ghoul was one that we actually found plastics in his GI tract. So all of this actually came from one turtle. So unfortunately, we do see this a lot with these guys. And I don't know if you can tell, but it's actually really hard plastics. So the problem with that is if it's going through his gut, it's actually going to cause lacerations and issues with his gut as well. If they're eating seagrass or anything on the bottom of the ocean, you get that plastic down there as well.
That has to be heartbreaking to see.
It's really hard, especially when we've worked with a patient so long, and then unfortunately, if they pass away due to plastic ingestion, or if we find it later on, it's really tough for us.
How do you get through that?
Kind of just have to focus on the ones that we can release and the ones that we can help, and know that, you know, we're trying our best for all these animals.
Oh, that sounds so easy though. I mean, it's not that easy, is it?
It's not, no, unfortunately, but you know, we just have to focus on the good. We would really like people to focus on lowering their plastic use. So, you know, we try not to use water bottles. We try to use reusable water bottles. Don't use plastic bags. So if you have reusable bags for shopping, that can really help as well.
But until more people latch on to that idea, Bobbitt says bee-bots like this will eventually be cleaning 30 beaches across the state of Florida.
This thing is just the start. Like I said, it's the first of its kind in the country, and we're very honored to have the opportunity to be able to test it out. But as we work on it more and we kind of figure out and work out some of the kinks, I think we're going to see more and more of these types of machines all along the beach, roadways. I think this is kind of a way of the future, but we're always going to have humans do the right thing first.
Center is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's a nature center that focuses on hands-on, feet-wet opportunities for education, exploration, and conservation. We just want people to have accessibility to the environment, and we want people to understand that our natural resources are invaluable. I'm Tess Taylor-Tynes. I'm the Conservation Science Coordinator at the Marine Discovery Center. This was a high school track and field, which, as you can imagine, wasn't really being used by a lot of fish or birds. 5 acres that used to be kind of non-functional for wildlife is now really a nursery for wildlife.
So, you know, in addition to all the marine life that's probably out here, you probably also see a lot of junk and trash.
Yes, yes.
Tell me about some of the things you've seen.
You know, commonly we find items like bottles and bottle caps that may have flown off someone's boat as they were driving by. We find plastic bags, fishing line is left behind a lot of the time. So the Florida Microplastic Awareness Project started out of the IFAS extension of University of Florida.
Okay, I'm going to be collecting a water sample from the kayak launch.
Ed Loomis has been involved really strongly through microplastics since the beginning of our involvement with the studies. Citizen science is a huge part of the mission at Marine Discovery Center.
It's a 1 liter bottle.
And the whole idea behind citizen science is that we can have people from the public getting involved at a scientific level without having to go through the labs or the master's programs or what have you. So this is a cooler full of archived samples from our last project. We have a 3-letter site code from where the sample site was taken. I could probably fill a storage unit full of them if I really wanted to. My thoughts are that it's pretty inevitable at this point, but those little petri dishes are like little things of hope for me. This allows us to gain a better understanding of this environmental issue in our local area so that we can tackle it in the future.
Somebody's cast netting.
And someone like Ed can say, I'm part of the solution and that I'm providing data. Yeah, I see a lot of hope in the work that we've done.
Learn more about Florida's trash problem and how people in the community are working to get results. Just download News 6 Plus and watch the rest of this episode on the app.